Hi Year 5, this week your writing focus is going to be on newspapers, leading to the end of the week of you writing a newspaper article about Gulliver imagining you're from Lilliput. So let's look at the features of a newspaper. Now, one of the main features of a newspaper is having a headline, which you use bold letters for to make it really stand out and grab people's attention. You need to have an introduction, which briefly gives you the information but not all of it. You need to use quotes from people that have seen it or been around. It needs to be split into paragraphs so they're easy chunks to read. You need time adverbials such as last week or later that year. And you need to give opinions as well. So there are a few of the main features before we move on to the success criteria that gives you a more detailed overview about the things that you need to include. Okay, so there's quite a few things that we'd like you to include in your success criteria. So just to do with the headline alone, you need to make sure you're using bold letters, so you can use bubble writing, powerful words, often that are really emotive. You need to attract attention by making either it very serious and overdramatic or very funny, and you can use wordplay, things like alliteration. In your first paragraph, where you're not giving all the information but you're giving some, you need to tell the main point of the story. It's not like a normal fictional story where you're building up the tension. You need to give the reader an idea straight away about what it's about. You need to try and hook the reader, so again you're using emotive language. The first sentence is often the entire paragraph, so the entire paragraph doesn't tend to be very long at all, and it helps to answer the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, plus how it happened. You need to make sure it's organised into paragraphs. You need to make sure you've used quotes. Now, these quotes are often given by people who've either seen what's happened or are directly affected by it. It's good to include some facts and opinions from the different people who've witnessed it. As the article progresses, you need to be becoming less orientated with the details. And then in Year 5, you need to make sure you're using those time adverbials that we're going to talk more about later. And then as Year 6, you need to be using these again, as well as punctuation. So in Year 5, we're expecting you to make sure you're using brackets or dashes. And if you want to challenge yourself, you can use semicolons and colons, which we'll talk about in just a moment. What we're first going to recap is something called parenthesis. This is basically when you add extra information using commas, brackets or dashes. So example of these include I moved to Sheffield in 2011, bracket, when I was 6 years old. So the extra information there is that she was 5 years old. Using commas, the narcissus, comma, daffodil, comma, is a spring plant with yellow petals. So there you're giving the extra information about what it's commonly known as. And the last example is my brother, dash, the one who lives in Australia, dash, is coming over for Christmas, where the extra information is given about where the brother lives. Parentheses can often be used in your newspaper articles to add in extra details. It could be where the witness lived, or give some brief descriptions about the person. Now, some punctuation that we'd like you to challenge yourself with this week are using semicolons and colons, which you have touched in school before we went into lockdown, and you've done for some of your spag work too. They're used for totally different reasons. So colons are often used to introduce a list of things. So for example, the dog that got into the house broke, colon, the vase, the table and the chair. So you put the colon before listing what the dog broke. This is different to semicolons, which are often used to link sentences together, so they can replace a conjunction of sentence. So for example, the wood was silent and absolutely still, semicolon. Little Red Riding Hood realised that she had not truly seen its beauty until now. So the semicolon there has been used to take out a conjunction to make it shorter and look a bit more mature. Now, these aren't things that you have to include in a newspaper article, but it'll be things that would be very impressive if you do, as it's a more challenging piece of punctuation that will help you ready for Year 6. Another feature, which we kind of looked at last week with recipes, is using time conjunctions. So these tell you the order of which things have happened in. So for example, you could say first, second, next, last week, then, after that, while, earlier that week, finally, afterwards, last or last year. Those are some common ones that are often used in newspapers, but obviously you can change it depending on what order actually happened in your article. An example includes later that week, comma, Mrs. Pemberton saw the amazing rainbow in the sky, with later that week being the time conjunction or the time adverbial. But you need to make sure you don't forget to put the comma after the adverbial. So what you're building up to this week is writing a newspaper article, imagining that you are someone who lives on the island of Lilliput, where Gulliver landed. Obviously, we know from hearing the story that Mrs. Thomas has read to you of this, that Gulliver is huge in comparison to the people who live on Lilliput. So, and it's obviously quite a shocking thing that has happened. If you need to re-listen to the story, it is still on our YouTube channel, so you become more confident with it. But you'll be writing a newspaper article imagining that a strange, huge person has arrived on your shores. We can't wait to see your examples, so please make sure you send them in to the home learning page.